The unseen power of humanity. The room filled with the quiet hum of the Galactic Council's chambers. Admiral Talon, a seasoned veteran of intergalactic diplomacy and military strategy, adjusted his uniform and prepared to present the images to the assembly. The image that first flickered on the screen was one that sent ripples through the galaxy. It was of Yavon 5, a desolate planet that had been home to the most deadly terrorist faction the galaxy had seen in centuries, the Keepers of the Sacred Word. Talon clicked a button, and the screen lit up with an image of 5 immense human battle cruisers, their massive weapons aimed directly at the heart of the keep. These were no mere gunboats. They were warships of terrifying scale, each armed with weapons capable of turning entire continents to ash. The council members shifted uneasily in their seats as Talon continued. Over 2 megatons of ordnance. That's what it took to neutralize a 50-square-mile area. 5 ships, 1 coordinated strike, and a terrorist organization was reduced to dust. Talon explained calmly, but the unease in the room was palpable. The keep, once thought to be invulnerable, had been eradicated with terrifying efficiency. The screen flickered again, showing a close-up of a human soldier standing in the middle of an asteroid field. She was wearing the typical light armor that human soldiers favored. Light but durable, optimized for mobility rather than heavy defense. The soldier's helmet was cracked, a small reminder of the brutality they had faced in their mission. The keep had brought destruction on a scale not seen in over half a century, Talon continued. They had a reputation for terror, brutality, and persistence. But to humanity, they were a mere inconvenience. The human way, overkill, as you call it, was to ensure that no such threats ever rose again. A member of the Galactic Council, a tall figure from the Galaxy race, raised a hand. But the loss of life, the destruction, couldn't a more restrained approach have been used? Talon's gaze hardened as he replied, "Rest assured, the lives lost were not human lives, but enemy combatants. The keep had no regard for the lives of civilians. Their weaponized biohazards and deadly viral outbreaks were only the beginning. The human response, while heavy-handed, was necessary. We call it overkill, but to the humans, it is justice." Next, the screen displayed a haunting image, the ruins of New Colante. It had once been a gleaming jewel in the galactic trade routes, but now it was a husk of crumbled buildings and scorched earth. The entire city had been destroyed in a single act of human vengeance. The humans had already shown their might at Yavon 5, but here, the devastation was personal. This was not just a military campaign. This was a statement. As the screen zoomed in on a lone human soldier standing among the ruins, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The soldier, a young woman in her early 20s, stood amidst the rubble, seemingly unbothered by the carnage surrounding her. Her posture was relaxed, almost nonchalant. She rested against a shattered tree, her rifle slung over her shoulder like a forgotten accessory. But this was no ordinary soldier. This was a human who had single-handedly taken down over 50 enemy combatants, including an entire group of heavily armed insurgents who had held off galactic forces for weeks. Her efforts were legendary, immortalized in countless reports and news articles, yet it was the way she did it that spoke volumes about the nature of humanity's approach to war. Talon shifted the screen to show the aftermath of this soldier's work. New Colante was no longer recognizable. The city, and everything within a 200-mile radius, had been turned into glass by a barrage of human nuclear warheads. The council members were speechless. To them, this was an atrocity. The sheer scale of destruction was beyond comprehension. But to the humans, it was nothing more than the swift elimination of a threat. A second image appeared, this time showing human soldiers in command centers, discussing strategy with impassive voices. The battle had been won, and they were already discussing the next steps. For them, the cost of war was always calculated, never emotional, never hesitant. Next, the screen displayed a haunting image, the ruins of New Colante. It had once been a gleaming jewel in the galactic trade routes, But now it was a husk of crumbled buildings and scorched earth. The entire city had been destroyed in a single act of human vengeance. The humans had already shown their might at Yavon 5, but here, the devastation was personal. This was not just a military campaign. This was a statement. As the screen zoomed in on a lone human soldier standing among the ruins, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The soldier, a young woman in her early 20s, stood amidst the rubble, seemingly unbothered by the carnage surrounding her. Her posture was relaxed, almost nonchalant. She rested against a shattered tree, her rifle slung over her shoulder like a forgotten accessory. But this was no ordinary soldier. This was a human who had single-handedly taken down over 50 enemy combatants, including an entire group of heavily armed insurgents who had held off galactic forces for weeks. Her efforts were legendary, immortalized in countless reports and news articles, yet it was the way she did it that spoke volumes about the nature of humanity's approach to war. Talon shifted the screen to show the aftermath of this soldier's work. New Colante was no longer recognizable. The city and everything within a 200-mile radius had been turned into glass by a barrage of human nuclear warheads. The council members were speechless. To them, this was an atrocity. The sheer scale of destruction was beyond comprehension. But to the humans, it was nothing more than the swift elimination of a threat. A second image appeared, this time showing human soldiers in command centers, discussing strategy with impassive voices. The battle had been won, and they were already discussing the next steps. For them, the cost of war was always calculated, never emotional, never hesitant. The Galactic Council's reckoning. The screen flickered once again, this time showing the human lawyer standing before the Galactic Council in a courtroom. The trial was about to begin, and the charge, war crimes. Humanity had once again provoked the ire of the Galactic Council with its brutal approach to the eradication of the keepers of the sacred word, and now the Council sought justice. The courtroom was silent as the human lawyer, a middle-aged man with a composed expression, stood at the front. He adjusted his glasses and began his defense with an unyielding tone. "Honorable council members, I ask that you reconsider the charges brought against my people," he began. "First, let us consider the fact that it was you, members of this very council, who called upon humanity to handle the threat posed by the Keepers. They were your problem, and humanity stepped in to end it. We responded with the overwhelming force required to neutralize them. There was no room for hesitation, no time for diplomacy." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Then, he turned and pointed to the next part of his argument. "Second, the biohazardous viruses released from the New Colante research facility were an intentional act of aggression. These viruses, designed to eliminate human forces, pushed us to take more drastic measures. Can you truly blame humanity for responding in kind?" A murmur rippled through the council. The human lawyer had made a compelling case. Humanity had not acted out of malice or recklessness, but had responded to an existential threat with the same resolve and pragmatism they had shown time and time again. The trial was dismissed almost immediately, and the human representatives left the courtroom victorious. As they departed, Admiral Talon reflected on the consequences of underestimating humanity. What the galaxy saw as overkill was simply the human way of ensuring that threats, no matter how large, were obliterated without hesitation. The entire trial had been a farce, a political ploy to placate the weak and indecisive. The human philosophy. A culture of overkill. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Talon couldn't help but feel a deep sense of awe and fear toward the humans. They were a species that saw war differently than any other. To them, there was no gray area, no compromise. There was only the need to win, no matter the cost. Human culture, he knew, had been forged in a world of brutal survival. From their earliest history, they had faced challenges that forced them to adapt, to overcome, and to dominate. They had no room for weakness, and their military tactics reflected this worldview. In his mind, Talon replayed stories he had heard of human soldiers on distant worlds, battling enemy forces that were far more technologically advanced. The humans never flinched. They fought with a grim determination, their hearts steeled by the harsh realities of their past. Overkill wasn't just a strategy, it was their philosophy. A new image appeared on the screen, depicting a battlefield from a recent engagement. Human soldiers, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, had not only held their ground, but had decisively turned the tide of battle. They had fought with savage efficiency, using tactics that others might have deemed cruel or excessive. But to the humans, it was simply war. They were doing what was necessary to ensure survival. In the aftermath of this battle, the enemy's forces had been utterly decimated. No survivors, no prisoners, and once again, no remorse. The cost of overkill, humanity's dark side. As Talon continued his reflection, he began to wonder about the true cost of humanity's relentless drive for victory. While the galaxy admired their resolve, there were darker undertones to their philosophy. The image of a human soldier, standing amidst a sea of destruction, haunted his thoughts. In the heat of battle, when every life was on the line, it was easy to see how humanity could justify their actions. But what of the civilians caught in the crossfire? What of the untold lives lost in their wake? Had humanity's tactics left scars deeper than any weapon could inflict? Was there a price to pay for this unyielding drive to win? The questions lingered, and Talon knew that the galaxy would have to reckon with this new power on the horizon, whether they liked it or not. Humanity's secrets unveiled. Admiral Talon took a deep breath as the screen displayed an entirely new set of images, ones that had been classified until this very moment. These images painted a more terrifying picture of humanity than any battle report ever could. They weren't just warriors. They were builders, innovators, and strategists operating on a scale the galaxy could barely comprehend. The first image showed an immense hypergate, its glowing rings pulsing with energy. Surrounding it were over 11,000 human warships, their forms casting intimidating silhouettes against the backdrop of a distant star. A voice recording accompanied the footage, capturing the astonished whispers of alien officers witnessing this fleet for the first time. "Do you see that?" One officer gasped. "There's no way. No fleet this large has ever existed." Another voice replied, trembling, "This isn't just a fleet. This is a statement." As the hypergate activated, drawing power directly from the star it orbited, the screen zoomed in on the gate's center. What they saw was incomprehensible, a connection to another galaxy entirely. Humanity was no longer limited to their own galaxy. They were expanding their influence across the universe, one hypergate at a time. "They're not just a galactic force," Talon said, his voice heavy. "They're intergalactic. Reports estimate that humanity exerts control over at least 27 galaxies and has a presence in thousands more. Their influence is unparalleled, their reach almost infinite." The council members sat in stunned silence as the next image appeared. It was a map of a region known as the Great Rift of Alfor. Just 10 years ago, the rift had swallowed an entire star cluster, and the combined efforts of 157 species, including humanity, had barely managed to contain the spread of lethal radiation. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. The final image displayed a human hyperweapon, a massive structure orbiting a quasar, harnessing its energy to create a beam capable of annihilating entire star systems. The weapon had been used to destroy the Alfor sector, eradicating a plague known as the Scourge before it could spread further. The Scourge had already consumed 273 planets in mere weeks, leaving nothing but death in its wake. "This weapon," Talon explained, "is the most destructive device the universe has ever seen. And the humans call it a precaution." The council erupted into chaos, their voices a mixture of fear and outrage. "How could they justify such destruction?" one shouted. "Are we to live under constant threat of their so-called precautions?" Talon raised a hand to calm the room. "What you must understand is this. To humanity, Overkill is not an act of aggression. It is an act of survival. They face threats on scales we can barely imagine, and they respond accordingly. They do not see limits as we do. To them, there is no such thing as too much. The final warning. The room finally fell silent as Admiral Talon prepared to deliver his closing words. He glanced at the assembled officers, diplomats, and leaders, all of whom now seemed much smaller in the face of the revelations they had witnessed. What we've learned about humanity, Talon began, should not be seen as a threat but as a lesson. They are a species born from struggle, shaped by the need to adapt and overcome. They do not act with malice, but with purpose. And that purpose is survival, on a scale we cannot fathom. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. But make no mistake, humanity holds the power to reshape the galaxy, or destroy it, on a whim. They are a force of nature, a hurricane in the void. And while they have shown no signs of undue aggression, we would be wise to remember one thing: do not provoke them. For what they call overkill, we would call annihilation. The screen displayed one final image: a human diplomat shaking hands with a galactic leader, both smiling as they signed a peace treaty. It was a reminder that, despite their overwhelming power, humanity had always sought cooperation and stability. Their methods might be extreme, but their intentions were clear. We must learn to coexist with humanity, Talon concluded, to understand their ways, to respect their strengths, and to value their contributions. For if we fail to do so, we will not just face defeat, we will face extinction. As Talon stepped away from the podium, the room remained silent, each member grappling with the weight of the information they had received. Humanity was no longer just an ally or a rival. They were a presence that would shape the future of the galaxy for centuries to come. And as the lights dimmed, one thought echoed in every mind. In a universe of endless possibilities, it was humanity's unyielding determination that would leave the deepest mark.